In West Philadelphia, born and raised, starts the beginning of a theme song that most of us probably recognize. Except for 80 years, this person has known no other home but Philly. And for the better part of the last century, he has held the same job at the same institution. A university who's held three names during his tenure, but whose men's basketball coach remained the same. And that's the only way he would have it, no matter how good the offer to leave may have been. This is what you don't know about Herb Magee. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
And today we're going to talk about, in my humble opinion, the most underrated collegiate basketball coach of all time, Herb Magee. Matt, who do you think is the most underrated basketball coach of all time?
Of all time, that is
underrated.
That is a loaded question. Most underrated college basketball coach of all time.
You just say Herb Magee and we'll move on. I'm just kidding.
Herb Magee. I mean, I agree with you. After looking at this, but I think it definitely is. As far as somebody right now, I think it would have to be someone who's like regularly getting teams into the tournament or regularly finishing ranked, that kind of stuff. And that really, I think somebody like Bruce Pearl, who's never won a title, because in today's game, if you've won a title, you are in a select group of company. If you're at one of the big schools, you're in that same group. But just quietly, he's plugged away at places that don't win very often. And he has, and it ended poorly for him at Tennessee because of some scandal, but now back at Auburn and doing the same stuff. So that's a guy for me. And then all time, it would be somebody that's won titles, but nobody really remembers. I don't know who it would be all time. Yeah. Definitely somebody that's won titles, but for right now, I think somebody like Bruce Pearl fits the bill for being an underrated but good coach.
That's solid. I would not have considered that, but you're right, because as of this recording, Auburn is fourth in the country, I believe, and they sniped Walker Kessler from UNC, which seems to be working out for both teams. So we'll leave it at that.
I think somebody like Eddie Haskins. Is that the guy from Oklahoma State? For years and years and years. I can't remember now. That's him, right?
Sounds right. But completely wrong. I'm not an Oklahoma State basketball savant, that's for sure. But you're talking like way in like the long time ago. Who? Yeah. Who am I thinking of? I can't.
Don Haskins. Don Haskins was a coach. Eddie Sutton is the one I was thinking about. So you put them together, and Oklahoma State's got one all-time great.
Most underrated basketball coach of all time. We'll go with
together. I don't know who Eddie Haskins is. I'm apologizing profusely to whoever that person is, but there we go.
Well, I don't think what I said was much of a stretch. If you don't know who Herb Magee is, he was born on June 20th, 1941 in West Philadelphia. I hope you all got that reference. If you didn't, I'm sad. Herb's mother passed away when he was 12 of kidney disease, and his father died shortly thereafter from a stroke. I swear every one of these stories that before. I know.
Every one of these stories has this. Oh my God. It's like we only pick people who have tragic upbringings. Oh my gosh.
I know. It's really bad, because as soon as I read that, I was like, oh wow, we've said that that's a very odd occurrence, and that was a theme. And here's another example. Very weird. Man. But After his parents died, his uncle, Edwin Gallagher, who was a Catholic priest and the former chaplain at the famous Eastern State Penitentiary, very famous prison built in like the 1820s or something. It just closed within the last 50 or so years, but it was open for a long time. And this would have been in 53, mid 50s, early to mid 50s. He was the chaplain at the time. So he became the legal guardian of McGee and his three brothers. And McGee became obsessed with basketball in his early teens. It happened very quickly, very rapidly. He would find a court anywhere and would decline the offer to play pickup games with other kids. And he would just go work on his shot. He would just go shoot the ball by himself over and over and over and over. He would carefully watch players like Tom Gola, Paul Arizin, Bill Sharman, great shooters from back in the day. And Herb McGee was quoted at one point saying this, quote, "I knew I wasn't going to be a big, strong guy. I loved basketball so much. I figured the way for me to get into a game, make a team like West Catholic, which is a high school in Philadelphia that he eventually attended, have a career of some kind, was to become a shooter. So I did." He was, I believe he was measured at the time, or at least during the draft, he was measured at 5'10", 155 pounds. And so he was undersized. And this was a time before a 3-point shot too. But he did self-teach how to shoot the basketball. And he would even take notes. When he would go, he would study shooting and he would take notes, taking hundreds of shots, documenting which part of the rims he missed on so that he knew how to acclimate his shot for different parts of the court. Have you ever heard of anybody taking notes about their shots while they were practicing?
No, but that is something that I could picture guys that shoot like that now. You think about Kobe Bryant or Steph Curry, where we know their routines and they take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots. I can see that being something that they would do. But as far as missing, like where I miss on the rim, like do I miss front? Do I miss back, left, right? Like where specifically on each shot I miss on the rim? That's something I don't know. So is he shooting, retrieving the ball, going to a notepad, marking it, then going back to a spot and shooting again? Because that's a long workout routine.
That's a lot of cardio.
But for a data-driven world like we live in now, that's very analytic of him to do that. So
very forward thinking in that regard. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like I said, he did eventually join the West Catholic High School basketball team. He quickly developed a reputation as a long-range shooter. Again, long before the 3-point shot was invented. He was taking longer jump shots before that was ever a thing. And again, self-taught on the playground. He played at West Catholic with former Philadelphia 76ers head coach Jim Lynam and former St. Joseph's coach Jim Boyle, which they were on the same basketball team in high school, which is weird. But Philly can be a hotbed for basketball, so it's not overly surprising so good at players. It's like New York City, LA. Like you just find people there's more of them, and so there's bound to be better basketball players there than per capita than other places. Jack Ramsey, the coach at St. Joseph's at the time, came to West Catholic for recruiting. Looked at both Lynam and McGee, but he didn't offer McGee a scholarship, which is something that would come back around full circle in a little while. But he would offer Lynam a scholarship. Ramsey and McGee, though, became good friends later in life. I believe Ramsey was the person who inducted McGee into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2011. They became good friends. And McGee eventually would tell him, quote, "Worst mistake you ever made, Jack." About not offering him a scholarship, which Lynam wasn't a scrub, but he called himself the King. Herb McGee did. He called himself the King, but it was a nickname that was given by his teammates in high school because of his shooting ability. But they became good friends, and it's all fine and dandy.
Yeah, you gotta love the confidence in his nickname in telling him it was the worst decision he ever made. Also, this is Dr. Jack Ramsey, right? Like
Yes.
NBA legend commentator,
Yes.
Dr. Jack Ramsey. So we could do this is like 2 degrees of separation to get back to the origins of the NBA.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yep.
Which is cool. Dr.
Very
Jack
cool.
Ramsey. Awesome.
Philadelphia again. Herb McGee would go on, and he would, instead of going to St. Joseph's, go play at a smaller college called the Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences. Now, if you've never heard of that before, that's because the name changed long ago. It is no longer called that. It is Jefferson University now. And at some point in between, it became Philadelphia University, I believe, and then Jefferson University. But he basically, Herb McGee went there. He continued perfecting his craft, shooting the basketball again, long before the 3-point shot. Just that's the way that he saw his lane in the game, figuratively, was being a jump shooter because he was undersized. And I think that makes perfect sense. But he went on at Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences. He finished his career. He graduated after 4 years with 2,235 points, which was a record at the time. And he averaged 24 points a game on 50% shooting from the field. This was in like the early 60s. And again, jump shooting wasn't necessarily, if you go back on YouTube, right? Like if you go back on YouTube and watch a video of Herb, and you probably didn't see a video of Herb McGee in college, but if you go see jump shooters in the NBA at the time, like Paul Arizin, that jump shot looks really weird. If you're a fan of basketball today, that jump shot looks really weird because it is not what it looks like today. It's more off balance. There's just less mechanics because it just wasn't a thing at the time. And Herb went on in his collegiate career, of course, Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences was a Division II school, now is still a Division II school, and still averaged 24 points a game on 50% shooting from the field, long range shots. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, because there weren't a lot of guys doing this, but it makes you wonder, would any of these guys have been the first like 50, 40, 90 guys where you shoot 50 from the field, 40 from 3, 90% free throws? Like would somebody like that, would we have had those at this time if the 3-point shot existed? Maybe, because he's out there shooting threes. And we know that at least in college, the 3-point line when it first started was really close, and then it gradually extended to a point that made sense. 24 points, 50%. The 50% shooting gets me, because you're right. This is a little bit before the era where the jump shot really starts to look nice from a lot of people. But the crazy part is when you go and look at scores like from the 60s and 70s, some of those scores look like college games of today. So like on some level they were playing offense some level of more efficiently than we do today, because they don't have a shot clock. They didn't have a 3-point shot, and their games are ending in the 60s and 70s and 80s just like we do today. So it's like where's the disconnect? I don't know. But yeah, an impressive stat line from him. An impressive company that he kept being in Philadelphia. That's kind of cool too, that he just was around all of these people who became NBA coaches or were NBA coaches or NBA commentators. He just surrounded himself around with really talented folks. So
yeah, cool. The efficiency of basketball is an interesting point, because you're right. There was no shot clock and there was no 3-point line. And so what enticed players and coaches at the time to play a game fast enough to score 60, 70, and 80 points in college or the NBA at that point? It's like, what is the reasoning? Like you think of basketball today and how we like to just dribble the ball around at the end of games and try and waste the time because we're ahead. It's like it seems like the mentality of basketball was just so different back then that it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think about, and we try and have these conversations all the time, right? Like players today versus players back in the day, and who's the better all-time player, and we can discuss that until the end of time. But it was just such a different game, and I would have loved to know what Herb Magee would have finished his college career with. Way more than 2,235 points if there was a 3-point line, which that's across the board, right? That's everybody at the time would have probably finished with more points, but nonetheless, it'd still be interesting to think about.
Hey, you're talking about dribbling the ball around at the end of games. Your boy Dean Smith during that time, without a shot clock, was in love with that too. And also the same season, Duke scored 80 points, or the season after, Duke scored 80 points in a game. If you watch the Class That Saved K documentary, there's this sequence where they're playing these games in the 80s, but they also played a game that was 7-0 at one point. So it's not like every game was up and down the floor.
Sure.
Score fests. Some of them were very content to do absolutely nothing 20 minutes at a time.
True that. All right, we're gonna pause. We're gonna pause after Herb's college career because it's trivia time, and the trivia question today, whenever you listen to this, is a college-related question.
Okay, and I get some leeway and respect for having COVID fog, right? Like,
sure,
like this doesn't go against my official record. I don't have to.
We can forge it if you need us to. It's fine.
Okay.
This large production we have going here, we'll make sure to set the record straight. Okay, so
perfect.
In Philadelphia, there's an unofficial association of college basketball teams who compete for the Philadelphia City Championship on a yearly basis, known as the Big Five. Can you name the 5 teams?
Nope. I can name.
You get questions like you can.
We'll see.
You can ask,
we'll see if okay.
You can ask this. Okay, you can ask the questions and stuff. So that's all fine and dandy. But
I can get close. I think. All right. So
general questions. So there's 5. There's 5 answers. You can ask general questions. Obviously, they're all from Philadelphia. I'll give you one more overarching question. They all currently play Division I basketball.
Okay. So if I start guessing, am I done, or can I guess the ones I know and continue to move on?
We'll guess. How about you guess and shout out the Philly D1 schools that you know, and then we'll question the other ones.
Okay. All right. So for sure in this group, Villanova is one of them.
Correct. Villanova down.
Temple is one.
Temple is one. Temple down.
Okay. So from there, I need 3 more.
3 more.
St. Joseph's.
St. Joseph's is one. St.
Joseph. Okay, so there's the 3. There's the 3. I
don't know if this would be of assistance, but one potential qualifier would be the conference that they play in.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Okay, can I have the conferences of the 2 I've not named?
One plays in the Atlantic 10, which is the same as St. Joseph's, and the other plays in the Ivy League.
Okay, all right. Is the one in the A10, does it have a French name?
I believe, I'm not a historian, but I believe it is of French origin, yes.
Man, okay.
I think you're onto something.
So is that LaSalle?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Is
All
that
right.
French? That's my question to you. Is that French?
That's got to be French. Yeah, there's a lot of LLE at the end of that. That's got to be French, right?
Yep.
Um,
One more Ivy League school left. You can You can pull this
So
out.
Penn's in Philadelphia?
Penn.
It is in Philadelphia. Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
It's a private university in Philadelphia.
There we go.
Bravo.
Look at me.
See, you didn't even need to qualify. You didn't even need to qualify the brain fog thing.
Couldn't tell you who the Oklahoma State coach was back in the day, but I can tell you which 5 schools are in Philadelphia.
Better than me, because I probably could not have come up with them. So I'm glad I asked the question and not you. But we'll never know, will we? We'll never know. Okay, so bravo. Back to wait. Before we go back, I just want to say that I did not realize that this Big Five thing was a thing because obviously we're not in Philadelphia, but they all play each other every year, and there's like a de facto trophy they hand around, and like Villanova's won it like 8 of the last 10 times because they've dominated college basketball, not just Philadelphia basketball. But I didn't even know that was a thing. But that was pretty neat.
And I think they play each other, like despite what their home arena is, I think they play each other in the Palestra when they play a Big Five game. Like so Villanova's not playing. They've got an on-campus arena. They've got they play in the 76ers arena sometimes, but I think they play all 4 of those games in the Palestra.
Which is is it on Penn's campus, or it used to be, or it's like it's associated with Penn in some way. So it could be considered a home game, but maybe not. I mean, everybody's in Philadelphia, so it's really it could really be a home game for any of them because it's like miles from any of those schools. But
yeah, that's Penn's home arena. It's also, by the way, the thing that Cameron Indoor and by extension Reynolds Coliseum in Raleigh were first modeled on. The Palestra.
It's like 75 years old or something and is still going. I think Cameron's 175, Cameron Indoor Stadium. I think the fact that they call it a stadium bothers me, but we'll let that go. Anyway.
It's an indoor stadium. It's not out. It's an indoor stadium.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Anyway, I just have a disdain. Just don't mind me. Anyway, back to Herb Magee's story now. He, after graduating college, he was drafted 63rd overall in the 1963 draft by the Boston Celtics. Now, one qualifier, that was in the 7th round. Let's think about that for a second, people. That was in the 7th. He was the 9th pick in the 7th round, okay? Because there was only 9 teams drafting at the time. And, of course, we think of the NBA draft now. There's only 2 rounds, 30 teams. So 60 picks. You're like, oh, 63rd. He was like 3rd pick in the 3rd. No. Teams didn't exist. There was only 9 of them. ABA was still a thing. Half the teams were off on their own. So that's one qualifier. So 7th round draft pick in 1963. In addition, the Celtics had won 6 of the last 7 titles and would go on to win 5 more by 1969, which is the year that Bill Russell retired. So this was the Bill Russell Celtics teams that he got drafted to. That draft, Boston drafted 7 people, 6 of them attended the tryout. Magee was not one of them. He broke 2 of his fingers on his shooting hand, his middle finger and his ring finger, which, of course, is his bread and butter, right? Like he's got to be able to shoot the basketball. He broke 2 fingers on his shooting hand. Well, he after declining attending the tryout for the Boston Celtics, because back then you could have up to 12 people trying out for your team, and it's literally a tryout. You have to come and then get picked. There was no G League, I don't think. So there was no understudy or anything like that you could just go play on and get paid. Like you either made the team or you didn't. So there was a tryout. He didn't make it to the tryout because of his fingers. So he returned to Philadelphia College and became an assistant coach under his former coach, Bucky Harris, in 1963. He actually earned the same salary as an assistant there as he would have earned in the NBA as a rookie, which was $5,000. That's neat.
Works out.
It works out either way, right? He also, when he came back, he also agreed to coach cross country, tennis, intramurals, and golf, which is apparently his second favorite sport. And Magee was quoted later to say, all of it was for me to be involved with basketball. Like he just wanted to come back. He knew he couldn't attend this draft tryout, and he just wanted to be involved in basketball. So he had an easy job, right? He's the school's all-time leading scorer, just graduated, comes back in as assistant, and starts there. Well, 4 years later, 4 years after he comes back, he spends 4 years in as an assistant. Bucky Harris retires. McGee takes over. 3 years later, he wins the Division II national championship. In 1970, they win the Division II national championship. That is his only national championship under his belt. But I don't think I'm going to hold that against him.
Now, if you think about that in a modern context, he's somewhere around 28 years old when he wins a national championship at the D2 level. If we think about that now, that is an upward trajectory. Like, you're going to a D1 school the next year and you're going to be looked at, with a little bit bigger eye. That's not necessarily the way it was in 1970. It really wasn't that way. But at the same time, sometimes, it's just one of those things. It's not the way it works now. It was basically, who you knew, and if you got attention and if you got national attention or you got looked at, the guy that was at your school is the AD somewhere else, or they read the paper that you won the national title. Otherwise, they didn't even know you did it. So yeah, just a different world. But that's something that intrigues me about his story, is that he's wins a national championship so early and then doesn't go up the ladder, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
fascinating.
Also, that math's a little bit different. He earned the same salary that he would have gotten as an NBA rookie, but in the NBA, he would have just played basketball. And at his school, he was coaching basketball, tennis, cross country, golf, and he was in charge of intramurals. So he was working all day, every day. It's different math all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think he might have had a little more responsibility, but it's fine.
Same $5,000, but not the same amount of work, I don't think.
Well, and two, if he actually did make that Celtics team, I don't know how much he would have played. So that's an additional qualifier. And I like what you said about people. Maybe people just didn't know that he existed in 1970 because of everything was so localized, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like, the media coverage on stuff was very localized. So people in Philadelphia didn't know what was going on in LA or vice versa necessarily. So, but he would quickly become known as the head coach at Philadelphia University at this point, I believe. He would quickly get the moniker the Shot Doctor for his ability to teach players how to shoot. He was quoted later as saying, "What I do now is I simply teach shooting the way I taught myself." And that's not like kick them out onto a basketball court in West Philadelphia somewhere and make them shoot shots and take notes. He teaches them the same fundamentals and the same mechanics as how he learned. And he eventually would also become famous for speaking appearances at basketball camps. He would make upwards of 100 shots in a row. And campers, like, he would assign a camper in the front row to keep count. And he would shoot jump shots from the free throw line to the top of the key. He would move around while he was doing these demonstrations. He would address his mechanics, and he would never make eye contact with the students. He'd shoot a shot, make it, go get his ball, come back out, keep talking, shoot a shot, and he could do this 50 up to 100 times and not miss. It's like you see Steph Curry in warm-ups today, just messing around and just sinking everything with no defender. This guy could and he does it now. He could do it all the way. He's 80 years old now, and he still does camps, and he still does the shot. He still does his shot doctor thing. He still goes around and teaches everything. He can. His shots are unbelievable. You can go online and go on YouTube and look at him teaching kids how to shoot, and some of it's not even shooting at a basket. He stands like a person here and then a person 10 foot in front of him, and you're holding up your hands in a circle like you're catching a football, and you shoot into the other person's hand first. And that's how he starts his lessons. It's really interesting. If you haven't seen it, you should go take a look. But these speaking appearances not only were good for his reputation and good for recruiting and stuff, but we talked about how much money he made as a Division II coach. And you and I are somewhat familiar because we both went to a Division II school who won a national championship at some point. And they needed some supplemental income back then. And so they didn't make a lot of money. And as a matter of fact, his daughter is currently the team's volunteer director of operations. And over winter break, she takes the jerseys home and launders them because that's what they have to do. No chartered flights, no nothing. Like it's if you are unaware of what Division II basketball is like, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, that's and you know what? If you're going to call yourself the shot doctor, you should be able to make a bunch of shots in a row at a camp. Otherwise, you lose a little bit of credibility if you just stand up there and start bricking everything. But good on him. And yeah. Division II basketball is a different animal. It is closer to a souped up high school program than it is what you imagine with D1 sometimes. So I can see that. I can see his daughter laundering stuff. I can see volunteers making a difference at the D2 level because they do.
Yep. I think I read researching this that he only has one paid assistant coach on his staff, or he did at the time that the article that I read said that he only had one paid assistant. And that may have been the case back when he got the job in '63. They may not have had an assistant, and he might have been the first. And so that could very well be it. I mean, I think D2 has more than one assistant now, and I think they're all paid okay, if but anything.
It's not D1 where they call a timeout and there's 10 people that stand up to huddle with the coach before he talks to the players. So, I mean, that's definitely more like what it should be. I mean, I don't know why you need that many coaches for a basketball program in the first place, but, one
that's
or two
true.
or three.
I mean, I understand that too. That makes sense. Herb would also start getting asked by coaches everywhere, all the way to the NBA level, to work with players on their shooting. Most famously, he tried to help Charles Barkley. And when I say tried to help Charles Barkley, Jim Lynam, who at the point that McGee is assisting Barkley with his shooting, he was an assistant coach for the 76ers. And Lynam comes into practice one day and sees McGee helping Barkley with his shot. And after the practice, after that session was over, Lynam comes in and he asked McGee how Barkley was progressing. McGee said that Barkley would never be a great shooter because in order to be a great shooter, you have to try and make every shot. And Herb McGee did not think that Charles Barkley was actually trying to make every shot because all he was going to do was rebound it. I mean, that was part of his nickname. He was a fantastic rebounder of the basketball. So all he was going to do was go up and grab it and dunk it anyway. So it didn't matter if he made the jump shot. And so McGee predicted, like at the very beginning of Barkley's career, that he would never be a great shooter, and I think that helped. I don't think he ever, other than dunking, his jump shot probably looks about like his golf shot, if I'm being honest.
Definitely needs help on that. Although he's cleaned up his hitch. I think he saw a sports therapist or psychologist enough that he got over the little hitch in his golf swing. But yes, Barkley not the greatest shooter of all time by any stretch, but he made up for it in other ways with his game for sure. Just by how physical he was, made a difference. But yes, to be a great shooter, you have to try to make every shot, and that's interesting. Like, how many guys truly at that that physical level that know they can get a rebound when they need to, or even thinking about a jump shot all the time, right? So, I get it.
That's true. Like a lot of bigs.
Hopefully you're trying to, but.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, like, you get bigs who just randomly get open, and you can see it in their eyes. They're like, oh, crap, there's no one guarding me. I guess I have to shoot. And they're not ready to shoot. Or, like, somebody's wide open on the three-point line because they don't usually shoot, and then when they shoot, it's a brick because they weren't ready. And awkward. It looks awkward because they don't do it a lot. The bigs look awkward shooting mid-range jump shots, even threes now. And some of those shots, I don't think they're truly intending to make them because they just assume they're going to miss or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I get it. I get what we're trying to say. Yeah, it's not that
it's weird.
Don't hope to make it, but they know in their head they're not going.
It's not going in. His reputation, McGee's reputation, would continue to spread, and eventually he would be asked to be an assistant coach on the U.S. Olympic team at the U.S. Olympic Festival in 1995. The head coach of that team, John Calipari, introduced him to his team by saying this, quote, "This is Herb Magee. He coaches in Philadelphia, and someday he's going to be in the Hall of Fame." In 1995, he had accomplished a good amount. He had a ton of wins, and he won the Division II National Championship already. But this was only like halfway through his head coaching career-ish. And he predicted that. And then, of course, like 15 years later, he does get into the Hall of Fame. That's just an interesting foresight. I mean, when you know it, I guess. But another one of those, speaking of Hall of Fame, Jay Wright, current coach of Villanova, was one of those enthralled campers at one of McGee's basketball camps in the Poconos way back in the day. Jay Wright has since hired two of McGee's former assistants onto his own staff, and he was quoted as this: "He was such a prominent speaker and teacher of shooting. If you went to any camp in the Philadelphia area, you'd see him. He was everywhere. Like you could not be a basketball player, a coach, a basketball fan in Philadelphia without knowing or at least having heard of who Herb Magee was. Except it seems like for him at least, and I think he's fine with it. He doesn't care about the big national attention and stuff. And from what I was reading, when the 1,000th win was, because he has over 1,000 all-time wins, all at the same place. When that 1,000th win was coming, he all of a sudden started getting all these media attentions and stuff. And he was like, I don't know. He felt really weird about it because he didn't know what to do because the attention was just never on him. And all of a sudden it was. And so it seems like like he was in his bubble. Like he had a bubble in Philadelphia where he was comfortable, and he was comfortable in his job. He was comfortable at home. He was comfortable in his city. And that's that's most of the reason why he never left. But that's also the reason why so many people don't know who he is, which I think is a tragedy because this man's a genius. Like he's a basketball genius. And I just don't understand why he doesn't get more recognition.
There's definitely something to be said for being ambitious and being the person that always wants to do the next thing and to do whatever you're doing on the biggest level. There's something to be said for that. I think there's also something to be said for the person who either knows their spot, knows where they're good at, knows their gig, and stays with it and doesn't try to overextend. That sometimes can mean you don't reach your full potential. But if you truly know this is what I'm good at, this is what I do, and so I'm going to stay here, there's something to be said for that. And there's something to be said for this. He did not become the coach at North Carolina or at Indiana or UCLA or a big program. But how many college players and NBA players come out of Philadelphia? So how many of them has he worked with directly or indirectly at one of these camps? How many of them has he come to speak to by having this? And then he's able to coach at the level that he is comfortable with. I mean, like there's something to be said for that, for being impactful on a local level too. So I respect him for doing that because it's definitely got to be a temptation to change it up and see if you could do better. But not everybody's got that drive, not the drive, but not everybody's got that desire to want to be the center of attention. So yeah. I get it.
Yeah. He's not about attention. He's not about money. He's been offered numerous jobs over the years and he's turned them all down. And he says part of the reason is his family, because he was divorced quite some time ago and he has kids in the area living in Philadelphia. And he didn't want to go away from his kids either. Like that's, I think that's extremely admirable, not as a coach, but as a person, because you could have gone off and become an NBA coach, assistant or head coach at some point. You could have coached a huge D1 program with his reputation easily. And he could have made all this money, but he almost chose family over money. And like part of me is like loves that about him as a person, because you just, like you said, he just doesn't need that to feel fulfilled. Like a lot of people feel like they need that, and then they get there and they're like, oh well, I still don't feel good about myself. It's like, I thought this was going to make me feel better. He knew that, like he understood that in an early time in his life, and became comfortable and okay with it.
And he also had to know when to retire, because right now in his city is a player who cannot shoot a lick. And you have to know that the 76ers, I looked it up. Apparently he attended some practices for Ben Simmons to just diagnose the shot. But you got to know they were thinking, can we just hire this dude and follow Ben Simmons around every practice every day? Can we just hire him? So like he knew when he was done too. Like he's fine giving tips and diagnosing stuff, but he's not taking the temptation even now to coach in his city doing something that he's good at. I mean, he does what he does, and that's it.
Yeah, Morey would probably be very happy to pay him some money to get Ben Simmons to make a 3-point shot every now and then, except he's not interested. And if you ask him, he never even came close to leaving Philadelphia. He was quoted at some point saying, "I decided a long time ago I was going to live in the Philly area. I never would have taken a job just for money. Now, could I have made more money going someplace else? There's no question about it." End quote. So he was aware. But again, you just find your lane and you just stay in it. Some people are happy with that. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you're happy, then keep going, buddy. A couple more statistics, and then I'll get your final thoughts. In 2007, he passed Clarence Gaines, who was a longtime head coach at Winston-Salem State. With his 829th win, he passed him as the all-time winningest Division II coach. And in 2010, with win 903, passes Bob Knight as the winningest men's coach across all levels. That was temporary, of course, because everybody remembers when Coach K got his 903rd win, because he was the all-time winningest Division I coach. Well, at the time, Herb Magee had more wins than he did. So no one knew. His final career numbers, well, almost final. At the beginning of this season, Herb Magee had 1,123 career wins. I just looked before we started recording, and he has 9 wins this season. So do that math if you want. He finished below 500 just 3 times over 53 seasons. He made 31 NCAA tournaments, won 13 conference titles, and then the one national title in 1970 in his 3rd career season as a head coach. So what do you think?
So is he still coaching right now?
Yes.
Oh.
He is retired. Okay. He is retiring after this season. He stated at the beginning of this season that this would be his last career season.
Him and Kay going out together.
That's cute, isn't it?
It is. I think there are these coaches on a D2 level and even a low D1 level that are very successful and stay where they are for a reason, and they don't get the attention that the big name coaches do. And part of that is because being the big name, D1 basketball is the highest level of basketball. So if you're the best at that level, you get more attention. It's got more eyeballs and it's got more talent around. So that makes sense. But there are these guys at low D1 and D2 that really stick around and win games. Clarence Gaines obviously is one of those. Herb Magee is as well. It's just cool to look at his life and see how long he's been involved in basketball and been involved in basketball at Philadelphia and kind of the connections he has to still basketball in Philadelphia, right? He's running camps. Jay Wright was there. Jay Wright's the king of Philadelphia right now. And so he's got that connection too. The whole time we're telling this story too about him sticking around at a D2 level, I kept thinking about, it's a D1 school, but the current head coach at North Carolina Central, Lavelle Moten, who continues to win at his level. And you've got to think he gets looks regularly from other schools, and he just kind of sticks around at North Carolina Central because that's where he thinks he's supposed to be, at least right now, continuously. So there's still people doing this kind of thing where they stay in a spot and they work that spot. And like you said, I like that. That speaks to me that people are willing to do that and have success with it, right? You don't have to jump around everywhere to get kind of fulfilled and be satisfied. But yeah, I think you're right. I think your assessment at the beginning that he's the most underrated college basketball coach of all time probably fits, because he clearly is one of the best, and most people have no idea who he is. So, I mean, it's hard to be more underrated than that. Hard to be more underrated.
Yeah, it's hard to be more underrated than no one knowing who you are outside of your particular city, right? So, yeah, I think I think what he's done for that school is incredible. I think what he's done for the city of Philadelphia is incredible. I think what he's done for basketball is incredible. I mean, you can't ask much more of a human than the contributions that he has made to the game of basketball and to the school that he went to so long ago and is still committed to. And so I think that's an incredible accomplishment, no matter how many wins he has. Like if you stick around anywhere for 53 years, like you're pretty good. I mean, you're good at what you do also, but you're also a great human. And I feel like that's one of the better things. So anyway, that's what you don't know about Herb Magee. If you didn't know who he was before this, now you know. And now you got to go to YouTube and look up some of his coaching clinics, because hearing him talk and hearing him speak and hearing him coach is incredible. I've got one story for you, real quick story. So obviously we talked about Division II basketball is like no chartered flights, no nothing. And so so a while back, there's a story of him. Basically, he in the men's basketball team and then the women's basketball team from Philadelphia University, they travel together, right? Like that doesn't happen in Division I, but they play double headers. So like the women play first, the men play second. We're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Well, after these games on these road trips, his tradition was to always get pizza for the long ride home. But for some reason on this particular day, pizza was provided, but there was no soda for players to wash down their pizza with. So at this time, he had more than 700 career wins. And in the middle of a 4-lane highway, he tells the bus driver to pull over. He jumps out of the bus, crosses 4 lanes of highway. He finds a little store, runs into a mom and pop shop. He comes back out with bags full of soda, runs back across the highway with bags full of soda, hops back on the bus, starts handing out the drinks, and he said, quote, "You think Mike Krzyzewski is doing this?" He's absolutely not, people. But Herb Magee did, and that's all you need to know.
That's good.
If you have any more ideas, any comments about this episode, let us know on social media. And again, that's what you don't know about Herb Magee. Until next time, see ya.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.